future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
And there we are, folks. Greetings and salutations. And you are tuned in to Dr. Judy WTF here at UBN Radio at ubnradio.com. I am your host, Walt Lusk, and in studio as usual is Dr. Judy Rosenberg. We are going to be continuing and finishing our 4-part series on our patient Maria. It has been an amazing, amazing journey. And let's see if I get straight here in my camera. There we go. And we are going to have a fun song, which is oldie but a goodie and an amazing classic that we're going to shrink on Shrink That Tune. So stay tuned, and we'll have Maria calling in shortly. And we are going to be going through panels, 7, 8, and 9?
Yes, the paradigm shift.
The paradigm shift. And believe me, Maria, our patient, has had plenty of those.
Well, we've journeyed from, through, and now to, and the cracked lens of the wound of childhood is now beginning to clear up. We've done a lot of work, and I really appreciate, Maria, that you have been volunteering up and being so transparent with your process, which is not an easy thing to do. And so for those of you who have been following and those of you who have not been following, the process is always the same. We are wounded from childhood, and these wounds have a profound effect on the fiber of our being. We have primitive reactions from the first phase of life, which is our infanthood, our toddlerhood, our childhood, and these reactions then turn into negative core beliefs, and Maria's was something along the lines of that she doesn't feel very important at all.
She doesn't feel very important, and
right.
due to her childhood, it was, golly, it's very, very justified.
Yeah, and what really stands out in my mind is that in order for her to get attention, she had to put her hand on the stove.
I think it was age 4?
Yes.
Yeah, age 4.
Yes.
At age 4.
Yeah. Which tells us that people would rather be in pain, excruciating pain, than be ignored. And so the real wound is sometimes not as obvious to us, because the real wound is sometimes a wound of omission rather than a wound of commission. It's easy to say, I was wounded, I was beaten, I was raped, I was physically abused in some way, but it's not as obvious to see that I was wounded because my mother ignored me or my father ignored me or the world just didn't mirror my authenticity. So these are subtle wounds, but they're important in the encoding into the fiber of the being.
Sure, all these subtle wounds add up and multiply.
And they're triggered, and then when they're triggered, what happens is people fall into chaos because they become emotionally activated. They don't know how to handle it. If they're severely wounded from childhood and they don't know how to self-soothe because their mothers didn't attune to them, then what we have is someone in the middle of some kind of crisis and they don't know how to calm themselves down. And then they pick up a bunch of defense mechanisms like smoking, overeating, any other form of drug, or they will defend with shopping or porn or what have you. There's so many defense mechanisms. And just to acknowledge that unfortunately we lost Robin Williams, as you are all aware, and he suffered tremendously from, I believe it was depression or bipolar.
Well, he may have been a bipolar, and was in as a therapist friend of mine said, a nosedive that he just couldn't pull himself out of.
Yes.
He did say that he was involved in 4 projects. It's really a shame. He was involved in another Night at the Museum project, and Oh Dear Mrs. Doubtfire Part 2 that he was going to do, and he says it brought the demons out of him when he did movies. He just didn't want to do movies anymore. But, he had a mortgage to pay and 2 ex-wives to keep happy and, and responsibilities like the rest of us.
And there's always that debate of nature versus nurture. And the jury's out. We don't know if there's really a gene for this or that. And in essence, one of the ways that people like to look at it is that we are genetically loaded in some sense, and then the environment always triggers it. So if you have something brewing that's genetic, and I tend to go more toward the nurture model because, of course, I study a lot of attachment theory, but that's not to deny that we have encodings within us, genetic encodings, like your eyes are brown or blue or your hair is whatever color. So we're genetically encoded, whether we're coded for alcoholism
well,
or
my
depression.
hair used to be a different color.
Oh, so you've been uncoded and recoded. I see. We're going to talk about
But it's all real,
recoding.
baby.
I know.
Some folks have suggested that we do a show on bipolarism, and it's a very, very difficult challenge to diagnose. And from what little I know about it, it's hereditary. In other words, if mom or dad was bipolar, there is a substantial odd that one of the children, if you have more than one, would be bipolar as well.
And I always question this, and I
they're
will
very
put
creative.
I will put it out there that I question whether it's nature or nurture. In other words, are people getting the multi-generational hand-me-downs of the emotions from generation to generation, or is it a combination of true genetics with the nurture factor? So we don't have a good answer for that. If there was a good answer, then we wouldn't be debating it, obviously.
Some feel that homosexuality is that way as well. There's arguments on both sides, nature versus nurture.
Well, I think things are multi-determined, and I see in my practice that sometimes homosexuality, we certainly know that in nature, I believe 5 or 10% of the population are homosexual.
Nature, what do you mean, non-humans?
Well, no,
Or are you talking about humans? I mean,
I'm
in
talking
nature.
about, I'm talking about nature, every species.
Okay, yeah, all species. Okay.
And I don't know the exact statistics, but some people are just born that way.
Yeah.
And then I've seen cases where people have had aversions to the members of opposite sex because they've been so badly abused they don't want to go near the person that represents the abuser. So it's really, really hard to say which it is. But what we do know is that when we are not nurtured properly, and we are not attuned to properly, we build up these negative core beliefs that then trigger and end up detonating us. We either implode or we explode, and that's what we were talking about last time, or we unload. And Maria's been very courageous to begin the unloading process and complete much of the unloading process. And it's only when we are able to exorcise the poisons of our infiltrated past, I call it, the wounds of childhood, that we're able to empty out. It's a very Zen thing. We empty out, and then when we empty out, in can flow the light. So we get rid of the darkness, and then the light flows in. And I want to discuss a little bit about panel number 7 because it represents a lot of things. It represents, maybe you can put the panels up. And
Judy has a system. It's called the Mind Map. It is a 9-panel system. 3 panels are the from, in other words, a diagnosing of our challenge, working through it, the 3 panels, and then 2, the solution, the paradigm shift. And panel 7 is right there for those of you that are seeing it, or you can go to www.drjudywtf.com and see it as well, the mind map.
And if you look at the panel, it's a graphic representation of all the parts of ourselves coming together as a united light. And when you look at the light in the center, that actually represents the healing of going back to the original light that we were born with, because we were born whole and complete until somebody cast their shadow over us and sort of, so to speak, cracked our perceptual lens on the world and cracked our perceptual lens on ourselves, our view of ourselves. And so in panel 7, it's a graphic representation that the perceptual lens is now clean and clear. The person is more integrated in terms of their mind, body, soul, and they're more whole. They're more whole and complete.
What I like to contrast that with, which you talked about, which is great, is panel 1, where you have this sort of thing. It was like an eye and enveloped and engulfed in darkness.
Yes.
And if you look at panel 7, it's a lot brighter. There is a lot more light around it.
Yes.
And thereby there's more clarity, I'm sure, and more, is more healthy.
Yes, it's from the occluded eye of panel 1 and journeying through the corrective process and the process of what do you say? Don't repress, suppress, express.
Right? Don't explode or implode, unload.
Yes.
And it's unfortunate that Robin Williams, he was in a case where he definitely imploded.
Yeah, it's so sad. I just think that there are so many people out there who are suffering from implosions, and certainly we've talked about explosions and the clearing out that, for those of you who tuned in last time, saw the process of really unloading
Absolutely.
and expressing, and specifically expressing to the notion of the wounder, which is always the parent, because that's our first relationship and the most significant relationship. So the person who's most significant to us is always the one with the power and always capable of hurting us the most. And we talk a lot about childhood being a
hostage situation.
Right.
And then along those lines, it's really not how you start that matters. As we're learning through our journey with Maria, it's how you finish.
Yes.
And we have no control of how we start, but we have lots of control how we finish.
So I'm really interested to know how Maria is doing after this really very emotional process of expressing and unloading, and also taking into consideration that when we shift our system, when we paradigm shift, even though it sounds like a positive thing, it's another kind of a form of a precipice and another kind of a sense of chaos, because sometimes we just don't know how to be. We just don't know how to be in this new way. And so we have to integrate, and it takes time to really...
She called, and then we lost her.
Oh, well, we'll wait for her to call back. Not a problem.
Call back.
Okay, she'll call back. So it's not just an easy ride of a paradigm shift, because now we've got to adjust to this new way of seeing life. And so I appreciate very much that it's not the easiest journey. So we'll give it a minute. She'll call back.
I've got a number somewhere here.
Okay.
You did mention, though, that you had a patient that you saw a year after they came in, and they were depressed on a scale of 1 to 10. I think they were a 10.
Yeah.
And a year
Very
later,
severe.
their depression's a 1.
Yeah, I just followed up on this case. It was a very, very severe case of repression. The woman had absolutely no voice, and as a result of expressing the depth of what was repressed and really clearing that out of the way, and in this particular case, her mother decided to participate in the treatment, which was quite remarkable. I've written up this case in the book, and all the time I wonder...
The upcoming book... Healing Human Disconnect, which is being frantically edited as we speak.
Yes. And this case will be mentioned. It's called Black Roses, White Roses, Mother's Day, because the black roses represents the darkness of the wound, and then the white roses represents what we're doing today, which is the paradigm shift. And hoping that Maria will call back. Give her a couple minutes.
We've got a couple minutes, and let's see what we can do.
Okay.
So you had them come back in a year later, and their depression was a 1, if I recall.
Actually, I just spoke to her on the phone, and she is doing fantastically well.
We have Maria on the phone, I believe.
Wonderful. Hi, Maria. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
Thank
Yep,
you.
Good evening.
Well,
Great to hear from you. Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
so just wanted to check in with you and see, you've been through a lot in this last week, and the therapy, I'm imagining, has not exactly been easy, but I'll let you comment on that.
No, it's been a tough week, and, sitting with a lot of feelings emerging, and it's been good. It's actually been good.
So tell us a little bit about what's been good, because it sure has been very challenging to be up against the darkness of your past. And I had mentioned earlier how children would rather get attention through very painful ways, as you did by placing your hand on the burner. I will just never forget that. That's just going to be in my mind forever. And coming from that level of darkness and the level of loneliness that you experienced, and how much you tried to entertain yourself, and even that was punished. And so just tell us a little bit about what's good, what's maybe even beginning to shift or clear up for you.
And maybe some aha moments.
Well, I felt very deep sadness around Robin Williams' passing, around his suicide, and what it illuminated for me is what it is that causes a human soul to just snap and get to the point where one can no longer feel anything.
Yes. And
I reflected on myself and where I've been in my life, and all of the pain and the struggles and the perceived failures, and I actually got to a place of feeling that I had a very strong resolve to the light. I've always had a very powerful source inside of me that at the end of the day, in my dark night of the soul, have reverted to, that keeps me somehow believing, somehow continuing on, that it's worth it. It's worth it for me to move through the pain, to move through the darkness.
I haven't talked to you in a few. Sorry, I just wanted to clarify something. I haven't talked to you in a few days. Did somebody pass away recently?
Well, my father's in the process of potentially passing.
Okay.
So I have that going on.
Yeah.
But the suicide of Robin Williams really affected me.
Yeah, it was a little difficult to hear. It was Robin Williams that really impacted her.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
It's just this sense of deep sadness.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, grappling with my own soul and my own feelings about everything that's been going on and all the experiences that I've had in my life, I came to a place of understanding that I've always had a very strong light source. I've never lost the thread.
Yes.
And whatever it is, when one loses the thread, or lets go of the thread of I've always felt a strong pull towards the light. And it made me realize it's really going to be okay. I mean, I've come through a lot of it.
Yes.
No matter how dark it's been, no matter how painful it's been, and I've been in a lot of pain recently, reliving this early childhood wound of just really feeling so much anguish, so much grief. But somewhere I have a resolve, and I got in touch with that resolve inside of me. And I've always felt I've had a great deal of joy. I mean, I can't explain it in psychological terms. I just am aware that there's always been this light in me that I've been drawn to.
It's...
Well, talking about joy and sorrow, I have an expression that I say is shared sorrow is half sorrow, and shared joy is double joy.
Yeah.
And I also think...
I mean...
Go ahead.
Somewhere in there, whatever went on in my early childhood didn't break my spirit. I think that is the remarkable thing. And I don't know what it is that causes someone to snap. I've been close to the edge many times in my life. Several times in my life, not many times.
You talk about the dark night of the soul, and I remember there's a book called Dark Night of the Soul. I don't know if you're familiar with the book. I don't remember who wrote it, but I remember reading it, and it's a really, really powerful journey into the darkness. And one of the ways that I like to think about this journey is that oftentimes we do have to enter this darkness to get to the light. And certainly in your case, you haven't been in denial through this process. You have really allowed the process of the ripping off the bandages, so to speak, to reveal. And I really do feel, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, because this is not an easy therapy. It's not a traditional therapy. What you think of the idea of really going right deep down into the wound rather quickly in the process of the therapy, and exposing it to the air, exposing it to what I call the truth light, because that's what we've been doing, is we've been really exposing it to the depth of your truth. And it's not been a pretty truth, but it's been your truth. And so what is your experience of having gone through this process, and the impact that it's having on you in the here and now?
I just feel like until you can really, really, really surrender and stop fighting those feelings, you can't go through them. And I know other times that I've been through the dark night of the soul of just feeling this complete and utter anguish and letting go and surrendering.
Yes.
And just begging for the light to just hold me and to just be with me. And for me personally, that's the thing that has always pulled me through. I don't know how it is for someone who doesn't have that.
I think surrender is an amazing and a really, really good word.
I want to address this because some people listening are atheists, some people listening are agnostic, some people listening are very, very religious or spiritual. And, this is a concept. My mind map is a psycho-spiritual model, in that I think that there is this force, if you will. You can call it the light, you can call it God, you can call it, I like to call it source energy, you can call it universal truth. So in a way, your religious or your spiritual or whatever orientation that you have, there's always this sense of, some people just call it a sense of grace. And AA talks about it, I know, when they say, let go, let God. And truly, when we're able to go into the truth as deeply as you've allowed yourself to go, there's something there. It's almost like you hit the bottom of your darkness. And I just want to share one personal thing that I experienced was when my father died. I was in the room. I had the privilege of being in the room with him, and I bottomed out on my grief, and I bottomed out so deeply that the carpet was literally soaking wet, and he couldn't talk any longer, but I said silently, okay, you can go now. And shortly after he did. He left. And I thought that I was going to feel a sense of emptiness, and there was such a sense of fullness in the room. It was almost like I can't explain it. And so when you talk about this, and it reminds me that when we really, really empty out the infiltrations of the past, the wounds of the past, there's this force or source or light or whatever you want to call it, that it's like, I'm going to go back to the Zen thing. You empty out, you let it go, and it's like this beautiful tide comes in, this beautiful tide of light, and just fill it. I felt it fill my spirit. And as you're talking, I'm almost sensing that you may be experiencing a similar kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm. Mhm. I do. I really do, and I really understand what you're saying. When you are with someone who is passing
Mm-hmm.
and leaving their body,
Mm-hmm.
there is this incredible sense of relief and lightness
Yes.
and connection to everything that is. It's not a scary feeling. It's not this kind of fear-filled, like, oh my God, they look so. It's not about any of that. It's just about the feeling, And I've had that experience at different points in my life, and I feel very, very incredibly blessed.
And I know we talked about this, but as a spiritual person, I think that you could never really forgive yourself for not being able to forgive and to be past it. And so when we started talking, I was explaining to you that there's an order to things, that we have to really let the poison out before we can truly forgive and be in this grace, in this space of grace, if you will. And instead of just saying, okay, I'm letting go, I'm done with the past. And it's almost like to me it lacks an authenticity when you try to forgive without letting the poisons out. And so that's why I thought this might be a different journey for you than the one that you've taken in the past. And I just want you to speak to that, because you did this time. You really did have the courage to clean out your own wounds and face them head on. So what's that like for you?
I think that the deepest cut is really about forgiving ourselves for our own self-betrayal.
Wow. So well said, because yes, it's easy to see when you lose another human being how that can be, but in a sense you're talking about forgiving yourself for having betrayed yourself, because isn't that what we've been talking about? We ingest, we digest, and then we manifest our core belief, and then we buy into the core belief, and that's where the betrayal lies. And then we live our life through the lens of that core belief all along, thinking we're to blame, it's all our fault, we could have done better, why is my life like this? And in even questioning this, there's a sense of betrayal. And so to forgive yourself for having bought into the lie, that's very, very well put.
But you can't really, I don't believe, and I'm just saying this for the first time, I think the process is not about forgiving yourself readily, just like, okay, I'm off the hook, but really to acknowledge the pain, acknowledge the betrayal, acknowledge the human element of the betrayal, that under the, just that you did the best you could do, and then to have compassion,
right,
for the circumstance.
That's exactly. I mean, you couldn't have said it better. It's that process of self-compassion, because it's easy to just say, I forgive, but you're going a lot more detailed than that. You're going right to what it took for you to see, what it took for you to really relate in terms of empathy for the self, and arriving at it like that, just not with empty words of, oh, I see what happened, okay, I forgive myself. It's been a really very detailed and in-depth process for you.
And I agree with you, Maria. It's a lot of times we are guilty of shitting on ourselves. SHOULDING, shitting on ourselves. I should have done this, or why didn't I do that? And sometimes it's delayed intelligence. You look at it after fact and, darn, why didn't I do that? And it's like, well, we all do it to ourselves. And by the way, you're listening to Dr. Judy WTF here on UBNradio.com here in the heart of Hollywood. We are on our fourth and final conversation with an amazing, and courageous lady, Maria, and getting some incredible insights on her journey through the mind map.
Maria, I also wanted to talk about the confusion of shifting, and I refer to panel 7 as a paradigm shift because you're shifting out of the lies into the light of the truth. And of course, when that happens, there's just kind of like a new way of relating to yourself, a new relationship with yourself, a more compassionate relationship with yourself. And earlier on, at the beginning of the show, I talked about the confusion, kind of like I liken it to Shawshank Redemption, when one of the prisoners is finally let out of prison. He says something like, I don't know what to do, because the structure of the old was so comfortable, even though it wasn't necessarily healthy. The structure was familiar. And so when he was out of jail and in the light, literally in the light of day, he just got confused and just didn't know what to do with himself. And I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
The confusion of not knowing what to do, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so you've gone through this journey now, and of course it's a lifetime journey. It's not like we march through these, nine panels and then we hit some sort of a bingo. It's just this constant process where we always have to self-reflect. We always have to self-correct. We're always needing to be in our compassion with ourselves, with the human beings around us as best we can. And so once we get to this place of, wow, I forgive myself for all the lies that I bought into. I forgive myself for having believed that I was a horrible person, an unworthy person, an unimportant person. And now just see what life is for you from this point on, imagining that you don't have the comfort zone, or at least maybe letting go of the old comfort zone, albeit negative. It was still your pattern. It was still your thought process. What's it like for you to have this kind of a, heading in the direction of the shift and into the light and into new possibilities?
I think it's about remembering the great joy that I have, the great enthusiasm I have for life, and starting to sort of allow that in. I have a lot of things going on in my life right now, and I tend to get bogged down with all of the logistics of things.
Yes.
And what I feel at this point in the week, having had this whole week to kind of process my feelings, there's this sense of, I'm tired of feeling this way, and actually I want to feel good, and I have things to feel good about, and
Yes.
I can really build on that, and I'd rather build on that. It's like, I believe it's valuable to delve into the depths of my soul, but I don't want to hang out there indefinitely.
And, I talk a lot about the darkness, and then, of course, now the light. And so we're always going to have an element of darkness just because that's our human spirit, and we're always going to have the scars from the past to remind us of our journey. And yet what you're talking about is you don't want to marinate, so to speak, in the darkness. So you don't want to dwell on it. And is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Right.
There's room for laughter. There's room for joy. There's room to lighten up. There's room to kind of dream about the possibility of what my life can be like. I mean, I've been shedding a skin, so it's been like releasing an old paradigm.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Paradigm of seeing myself.
I created this system, and it was a dream system for myself. Like, what if I could really shift people quickly? Because I'm psychoanalytically trained, and it used to take me years and years to create paradigm shifts in people. And I knew there must be a better way. And I'm going to share this with you. At the beginning, I doubted my own because I knew that my patients were going to be the proof, and they were going to be the witness to this. And so oftentimes I thought, no, I'm going much too fast. I'm delving into subjects that you don't delve into until months or years into the therapy. And I really questioned this, and then I started seeing that the results were sustainable. And so I just want to ask you, did you feel that it was too quick? Was it too
much too soon?
Too much too soon. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
For me, I don't think so.
Okay.
I have done a lot of work prior, so I wonder how this affects the whole process. I welcomed it. I welcomed the immediacy of it. That's what I wanted. I don't want to hang out in this place for so long. I don't need to hang out there so long. For someone else, it may be a different process. So it's really about honoring where you are in the path.
Yes.
And I suspect that you will call in people who are ready to embrace this immediacy, because I know I did. And I think it's very valuable. I think way too much time is spent hanging out in the kind of indulgence of all these emotions. There's a value to that, too.
Amen.
I so appreciate you saying that. I can't thank you enough for saying that in a public forum in particular, because I know that I will be challenged by my own colleagues, and it's going to be interesting how they receive my radical, let's get to the wound, let's exorcise the wound business, because really they do hang out for a long time. And I think that people deserve more. I think they deserve to get to the light more rapidly. They deserve a system to get them there, not just kind of like an endless talk therapy that's going to somehow, over years and months, slowly eke out.
It's kind of assuming that, I'm sorry to step on your words, but it's kind of, from the perspective, the old paradigm is assuming that someone is broken until they're fixed. And you know what? We're not really broken. No one's ever really broken. And the sad truth is that we have these momentary experiences of insanity, perhaps. And I wish that someone had really held with, and maybe it wasn't his journey, but with Robin Williams during his passage of insanity,
yes,
of feeling completely abandoned by himself and everyone else. But that's not, who is to judge what anyone's journey is really about.
Absolutely.
But I believe that people are not broken. We are here. We are whole. Our soul is never affected by what goes on in this lifetime. So, I personally draw from that, and I hope that others can draw from that too.
I so appreciate it, and the preface
That's such a powerful
to my
statement. We are not broken.
We are not. That's the start of actually I had one of my patients, and you know who you are. I hope you're listening in. One of my patients said to me, look, Dr. Judy, you're just going to have to hit him right away with the statement that we are born whole and complete, and that we become broken, and then we can heal, and that we could become whole and complete once again. And that really is my model. If you look at panel number 1, if you'll put it up there, there's always the light, and then there's the broken pieces, and then there's the journey, and then there's panel 7, and we're back to the light. So the light never disappeared, it just got clouded over. So what we're doing is I'm thinking in this process, what my imagination is that we're just removing the obstacles to who you are as a whole and complete and soulful person. And that's why I think this model is really powerful, because it really assumes that that we are whole and complete in mind, body, soul, and that we're not the cause of part 1 of our lives, and we are the cause of part 2, which is to remove the infiltrated past, heal the wounds, and really clean our lens so that we can relate to ourselves and the world in a whole new way.
Well, when you talk about a wound, sometimes it requires a Band-Aid, and there's two schools of thought on how to remove the Band-Aid, right? If you're going to remove it, a lot of Dr. Judy's colleagues think you should just peel it off one little tiny bit at a time. And Judy says, forget that. Let's just get rid of it. I mean, if you're going to get it off, let's just do it one big fell swoop, and it's gone.
Because we have too much life that we want to enjoy, and
live.
we want to be, we don't want to be living and dwelling, as you said. We want to move ahead and enjoy this. And just to refer to AA one more time, because I think they have such wise principles and spiritual principles, and this is ultimately a psycho-spiritual model. And it starts with the light, and it ends with the light. And in AA, they refer to when people, places, and things fail us. So that when our mothers, our fathers, our significant others fail us, and then when all the places and the defense mechanisms and the things fail us, then ultimately that's what's supposed to happen in a grander scheme of things, because we're going back to that energy at some point, whatever you want to call that, universal truth or a true let go or source. So ultimately, we're back to the light, and ultimately we've come full circle. And that's why in panel number 8, which is that last piece of the shift, we end up recoding ourselves, because we're no longer relying on the source of our damaged parents. So when people, places, and things fail us, then we know that we can put our higher power as the highest power, not that thing and not that person. And I think that's what you've been describing, is that when everything peels away, what did you have?
Mm-hmm.
And
Exactly.
yes, and now moving forward, you get to manifest.
When everything is peeled away, I have my essence.
That's right, your essence.
I have the essence of who I always was.
That's right. And so going back to the idea that we are born whole and complete, and then the shadows come and fragment us, and then we yearn, our souls yearn to go back to that sense of wholeness, and your soul yearned to go back to that, and now it's yearning to go forward and away from that darkness. So as you move forward and you see the encoding of your negative core belief, which was something like, I'm not important, yes?
Yes.
So what do you think about that? What do you think about the self-definition of you as you're not important?
I see how I have made myself less important than others in my life, and how the shift of my focus is really about me honoring myself.
Yes. And as you move forward with your projects, what you can so so consciously do is be really, really aware of that negative core belief, and wherever it lies for you today, really, really being cognizant that we're humans, we can get tripped up by it, but then we can always move past it. And as you encode yourself into this, weaving the wisdom that you want to weave into the rest of your life, and the behaviors and the thoughts and the new patterns, and having the goals that you've described to me manifest, it's always so much easier to flow, right, when you don't have all those obstacles blocking the way. And so the whole purpose of this is to release those obstacles so that we could be in the flow again, and be in the flow of the essence of who we are.
I think that also feeling acknowledged in being able to acknowledge ourselves, but also being able to feel acknowledged in the presence of others or another is very valuable to our human condition. We're not
absolutely
isolated beings.
I'm sorry,
So
say that again.
I think that's very good. Pardon me?
Say that last sentence again.
I said to feel acknowledged in the presence of another human being, in the presence of others, is incredibly valuable. Just to be acknowledged for what it is that we're experiencing, that it is of value, that it is significant. Is so vital.
When you said that, I thought about something that you had shared with me about writing out your wounds and your infiltrated past, and then part of it was burning it in the fire. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I'm just
yes.
and now for you to say, wow, that's a great system, and there's also such greatness to having a witness to your pain, a witness to your process, a witness to how these lies came to be, and really sharing that with another human being, and and your acknowledgement of that. And I really appreciate that.
Because I feel like it's only what cannot seek the light, what cannot be exposed, what cannot feel resolved, that continues to feel this sense of disconnection and the sense of being too damaged or too wounded to heal. I still can't fathom what it is to go to that level of wanting to kill myself.
You can't fathom that level. Yeah.
No.
And now
and I think it's very unearthing for a lot of people to. I think a lot of people were affected by this. In that, not just that it's taboo, but it's kind of an unhinging of the human condition.
Yes, very much. And I think you're right. People will activate other people, especially when people are on that edge. And so that, we are a lot. This is the human race. There's a lot of pain and suffering, and just knowing that we are whole and complete, and we can heal our fractured and infiltrated wounds of the past, and that we could truly have a pathway to healing, just that, and to have a human being, because that's true attunement. True attunement is when you can speak the truth to your wouldn't it be nice to be able to speak the truth to your mother or your father, but when you can't, then it's so healing just to be able to tell your truth to another human being. So I very much look forward to knowing how your life is going, and just
it might happen once you call in at another time and give us an update, a brief update, if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you.
I would,
No,
I
thank
would
you.
love that, and I just
It's
telling
been very valuable.
Thank you. I so much appreciate your sharing in public your journey and allowing me the opportunity to really go through the process and show the process to people listening, and let everyone listening know that there is a kind of like an Occam's razor, or an E equals MC squared, if you will, way to get you from the problem and through the process and paradigm shift you. And it doesn't have to take many, many months and many, many years. And for those of you who
Absolutely
do need
not.
long-term treatment, then so be it. And if you need that, that's valid too. So, Maria, I want to thank you very, very much for being on this journey, and
You've been very, very courageous.
yes. And please,
Thank you so
do
much for having me.
my
Well,
my
It's been
pleasure.
a thrill
I
and an
hope
honor.
it's helpful to others.
I
Thank
know
you.
it's
The
helpful
The response
to
has
others.
already been amazing so far.
Yes.
Yeah, it really has.
Thank you.
So take care. God
Okay.
bless. We'll stay in touch.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
God bless.
And
Bye.
God bless you
Okay.
too.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye. Well, that was incredible. That was an incredible experience for me. And just one other comment that I want to make. I'm going to be moving into work on more of a global level, healing global disconnect. As a matter of fact, my assistant and I already started to put together a website, which hopefully will be up and running. It's called jointhehumanrace.today. And we're going to have a lot of...
really?
Yeah, really,
I didn't
really.
know this.
This is a secret.
Oh, my
So
word.
secret's
Yeah, I
out.
didn't know this,
It's called
folks.
jointhehumanrace.today.
Oh, my gosh.
And it's really about how our macro problems of this global
Yes,
disconnect
you and I talked about this.
that's been going on is really it really starts from human disconnect.
That's
And
what it
so we're
does.
going to trace it, and it'll be a platform where you can actually sign up to join the human race, meaning I already know that you're human and I'm human, but it's really about joining the humane race, okay, to be more specific. And that means that before we are American or Jewish or Christian or Muslim or gay or straight or black or white or rich or poor, number one, we're a human being. And so I think that it's going to be really important to create a third entity called the human race.
Yeah, be the
And
cause.
so
Join the human race
join
today.
the human race,
Dot
healing
today.
global disconnect. So that's coming up next, and I'd love to hear from you.
Wow.
And I'll be posting a lot of stuff on there. And Walt, you're going to help me.
Well, sure I am.
Of course you
Most
will.
indubitably.
Most indubitably, right. So is it
It's
is
our
it that
time for Shrink Our Tune,
Okay.
and we have got an oldie but a goodie, but when we all have to go back to the greats, and this one's entitled Here Comes the Sun by none other than the Beatles.
And very appropriately, because now we're on panel 7 and we talk about the light. And so the sun is the light. And here comes the sun.
The sun, here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. Little darling, it's been a long, cold, lonely winter. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here.
So this is such beautiful words, especially after this session with Maria, because she's saying, you know what? Here comes the sun, and it's all right. I'm in this light of grace, and I've allowed this energy, this whatever you want to call it, source energy, to really be there for me in this the dark journey that we all, or some of us, go on. Maria has gone on, and it has been a long, cold, lonely winter because there's been so much darkness, and it's been years since she's reconnected. Little darling, it feels like years since it's been here. The light's been here. So we come from the light, and it's been years of the eclipse of the sun, and now she's back in touch with that.
It's been years since we've been reconnected with ourselves.
Yes.
Here comes the sun, and I say, it's all right. Little darling, the smiles returning to the faces. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been here.
And that's the joy, the smiles returning to her face, because she was always a very joyful person, as she talked about, and then the eclipse of the joy, and now the joy coming through again in just, this burst of light.
And
Burst
here
of
comes the sun, here comes the sun, and I say it's all right. Sun, 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 here it comes. Little darling, I feel that the ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear.
And the ice I see through the mind of the mind map lens is the coldness, the distance, the disconnect, and that's melting away. And slowly she's beginning to have compassion for herself. So the ice, the apathy, the lack of compassion for self is melting away.
And here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. I say it's all right. Here comes the sun. It's all right, and it's all right.
And it is all right.
It is all right. So, folks, we are going to tune out and tune into the Here Comes the Sun by the Beatles. You'll be listening to Dr. Judy WTF here on UBN Network. You can pull us on Stitcher, either on your computer and or on the internet or on your smartphone or iTunes. And or you can pull it, of course, here at ubnradio.com. Next week, we'll start some more journeys of healing the human disconnect. You can write us for suggestions of shows at info at drjudy.com. I've been your host, Walt Lusk, and, of course, as always, Dr. Judy Rosenberg and the marvelous Mind Map. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for tuning in.